problems and also have problems with their rib cage, so that it's not just confined to the backache. But the backache is really the crucial distinguishing features of ankylosing spondylitis.
What was the sort of defining moment, would you say, when you were studying AS?
Well, I think the defining moment is that was in 1982. This was 6 years after we had discovered that Klebsiella was involved in ankylosing spondylitis. And I thought the obvious simple thing is try to get rid of Klebsiella. I went to various microbiologists at St. Mary's Hospital, at the Middlesex Hospital. I asked them, how could we reduce the Klebsiella in the gut? And all of them gave me vague answers saying that it's very difficult to control the quantity of bacteria in the bowel area, so in the gut area. So I have, from 1976, when I knew Klebsiella was involved in ankylosing spondylitis, till 1982, I was hunting for a possible way of reducing Klebsiella in the gut. And what happened is that one patient who was HLA-B27 positive, he was an aeronautical engineer, a very intelligent man, and he came to me and said, Dr. Ebringer, I would like to lose weight. So I said to him, okay, I'll give you a low residue diet. The low residue diet is very simple: no bread, no potatoes, no cakes, no pasta. You can eat as much meat and tomatoes as you like, and drink a bottle of wine a day. And 2 months later, this thin man walks in. He was absolutely delighted. He lost a stone on this low residue diet of a steak a day and tomatoes and drinking red wine. And then he said, by the way, Dr. Ebringer, my backache went. And that's the crucial observation that was my eureka moment, that I finally cracked it, that the bacteria grow on starch. And therefore, from 1982 onwards, we put all our patients on a low starch diet, and we measured some 50 patients over 9 months, and their ESR dropped significantly. And this was published in an American publication in 1984.
So am I right in saying that everyone, irrespective of whether you're HLA-B27 positive or not, everyone has got Klebsiella as part of their microflora?
Yes.
And the differences with the patients with HLA-B27 positive is that your immune system goes in to naturally cull those numbers, yes, but then gets confused, and that becomes the switch for the disease becoming autoimmune.
Essentially, the autoimmunity is probably a misnomer, because most of diseases have autoimmune features like rheumatic fever, yet no one thinks of rheumatic fever as an autoimmune disease. In this particular case, in ankylosing spondylitis, we have the antibodies are targeted against Klebsiella, but because Klebsiella has molecular mimicry, molecular similarity to the collagens in the spine and to HLA-B27, this is how the inflammation occurs when the titer of antibodies against Klebsiella is quite elevated.
When I come to see you in your clinic, and after 12 years of struggling with this condition, and you turned around to me and you swung around in your chair and said, when I asked you, how do I get rid of the bacteria? You said very simply, you need to starve it out of your system.
Yes.
Which obviously I went away and did with huge success. It did take many months. I think it was at least 3 months before I noticed a real improvement, and it was up to 9 months before my symptoms disappeared. But what I found staggering was when I came back to see you at the UCL for further checkups, it was evident that a number of the people in the waiting room there were still really suffering. They had their sticks and walking frames and wheelchairs, and I asked you why they weren't seeing the same or having the same success as me. And you simply turned around and said they're unable to restrict their diet with starch. They need to have their toast in the morning. They like their jacket potato at lunchtime, or roast potatoes with a Sunday lunch.
Well, you're quite right. I think this is a difficult diet, but it's not that complicated. It's just that mentally it is difficult to accept that bread, which is known as the staff of life, could cause damage, especially to this restricted group of individuals who have HLA-B27. However, can I make one other point? The percentage of ankylosing spondylitis patients who have HLA-B27 is not 100%, is 95%. Therefore, there are still a remnant group of 5% of individuals who have ankylosing spondylitis and are HLA-B27 negative. I have not been able to study this group, but I suspect these are probably the people who are great starch eaters. And we have had from American studies that even HLA-B27 negative ankylosing spondylitis patients who go on a low starch diet notice improvement in their clinical symptoms.
You know, when I go back and see my GP now, he says, "Oh, Mr. Codlin, it's good to see you. You're in remission." And I kind of laugh and say, "Well, I'd actually say I'm cured." Why do you think medical science struggles to accept your findings?
Well, you've got to remember that medicine is one of the oldest professions in the world, and it is very conservative. So that's most doctors want to relate to other members of the profession. So novelty is a very difficult thing for people to accept. Take, for instance, the problem that Darwin has for people to accept evolution. How people had difficulty in accepting that smallpox could be treated with immunization. And I think it will take some time to convince the medical profession that there is a simple approach in the treatment of ankylosing spondylitis, and this applies to other autoimmune diseases. However, there is another feature in this equation, and that is that drug firms are always looking for ways of producing drugs that help the patients. And one way of treating or helping patients with ankylosing spondylitis is to non-specifically reduce the inflammation. So they look at anti-inflammatory drugs, which are very expensive, which have also side effects. However, because they can be sold to the patients, this produces a block in treating ankylosing spondylitis by simple methods like a low-starch diet. My point is that you could use both low anti-inflammatory drugs produced by the drug firms together with a low-starch diet, and maybe one could achieve much faster and much better results. However, such studies, as far as I know, have not been carried out.
I understand that the HLA-B27 test can be quite expensive, and I know there has been some reluctance from GPs to offer this, but I guess you could get that blood test privately.
You can get it privately. The blood test, if you have backache, it should be under NHS rules. Any patients who've got backache should have this tissue type done by the NHS. The frequency of HLA-B27 is 8% in the United Kingdom, and with a population of United Kingdom being 65 million, we have roughly 5 million individuals who are HLA-B27 positive. It is accepted that 20% of HLA-B27 individuals have some symptoms of ankylosing spondylitis patients. That means that 20% of 5 million is 1 million. So we have 1 million individuals in the UK who are suffering from backache, who are suffering from vague symptoms, feeling unwell, and yet they have not been diagnosed. The point I would like to make is that anyone with backache should be tissue typed and look for this particular gene, the HLA-B27. It is fairly easy to carry out this test, and if it is positive, then one could ask these patients to have a trial of a low-starch diet together with the other drugs that they use for their treatment. There is a very interesting observation in relation to the frequency of HLA-B27. HLA-B27 is very common among Eskimos in Canada, and The majority of these Eskimos, although they're B27 positive, do not suffer from ankylosing spondylitis because their main diet consists of fish and hunting caribou and so on. However, when the Canadian government decided to resettle the Eskimos from their usual hunting grounds and sent them to the cities, they gave them social benefits, and they went to McDonald's and developed a high intake of starch in their diet, and ankylosing spondylitis now has become an epidemic among Eskimos on social benefits in Canada. Yeah. And no one's been able to say why this happens. Our take on this from the United Kingdom is that the exposure of HLA-B27 positive Eskimos to high starch diet from McDonald's, Western type of diet, has probably been responsible for this epidemic appearance, incidence of ankylosing spondylitis. Eskimos being given social benefits, the wrong advice that you could have a Western diet. Hence, this is the possible explanation why ankylosing spondylitis has become an epidemic among town-settled Eskimos in Canada.
Well, Alan, it's fascinating talking to you again today. Thanks ever so much for your time, and we'll see what we can do to convince those other AS patients out there that diet really is the way forward.